Okay. So we talked about karma segment, the path of karma in the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad-Gita. How motivations are supreme. That is for the joys of the self. That is supreme motivations. And then we talked about the attitudes, the right attitudes to do your work, which talks about yajna, tyaga, samarpana, prasada, bhavas. And then in the 4th chapter, we talked about jnana karma sannyasa, which is about infusing knowledge into the thought processes for the work. The attitudes are one thing, but then you need to also have proper thought processes to work successfully. Attitudes are good, but thought processes are important. So the thought processes are determined by the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic content within our minds. And based on the sattva, rajas, tamo gunas, there are 4 classes of people that have emerged in human beings. That is what the Bhagavad Gita says, which is the Chadur Varnyam. Or Krishna says Chadur Varnyam Maya Srishtam. The Chadur Varnyam, the 4 types of analytical classifications. Chadur Varnyam. 4 types of analytical classifications. Descriptive classifications of human beings emerged because of the self, me, the self, powering the mind and the intellect, and enlivening the sattva, rajas, tamo gunas, and making the mind work through that. So we have the Kshatriyas, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. This classification was basically describing the way these people work. So it is about creativity, productivity, and enrichment that one brings into the society through their work. And then Krishna talked about, yes, you can have attitudes, and you can also bring thought processes into your work. But then you also need to work with that conviction about a sense of duty without any likes and dislikes. So keeping your mind equanimous and dispassionate without going after the path of pleasure is important. So that is, and then you should also work without your eye on the results. That is karma sannyasam, the 5th chapter. When you have done that, then you have reached a state of mind which is quiescent and which is ready for entering into the state of flow in work, meditative state, dhyana yoga. So that is karma. Karma in summary. In a few minutes, if you summarize the whole of 6 chapters, this is how it will be. And then Krishna wanted to infuse Arjuna's mind with the inspiration required to really believe that he is himself the infinite self. So you need to love the self. You need to instill belief. Firm belief means it will help you to actually cultivate love for that self within. You should love yourself. The infinite is actually expressing through you. The Krishna is right inside you. So start loving that, not your body, mind, and intellect and their whims and fancies. So loving the infinite self within Krishna is basically what is required, and that is the process of bhakti. For that, he started by explaining the universality of the self. 7th chapter, therefore, is about the universality of the self. The practical knowledge that is required to really understand that the self is right within you, but that self is universal and it derives from the infinitude. Therefore, you are universal and you are infinite. That belief is required. For that, the knowledge of that, to connect with the knowledge of the self, he is now explaining the situation. He says in the 7th verse of the 7th chapter, which is, you can call it as the nodal point from where we will start. There is nothing higher than the self. He says that there is nothing higher than the self. Your Atman is the infinite. Because if it is infinite, then there is nothing more than that. And you must understand that everything in this universe is the self only. And everything what you see are like the beads in a necklace. Everything is strung on the self as a cluster of gems on a string. So this, the wonderful things that we see all around, all beings, non-beings, everything, living and non-living, all of them are nothing but beads on that string of self, infinite. Each one of us is therefore set of separate beads. That's all. But then our true identity is that self. That's what he is coming to. So, if I explain further on that, you can also see that the same logic that you see around you, the macrocosm universe is, every element in the universe is gem on that string. Similarly, within us in the microcosm, internally, what is happening is this self is the string that is giving life through this body, mind, and intellect. So my body, mind, and intellect are also beads on that string. And when this self passes through, energizes this intellect, it comes up with something. Mind, it comes up with some other characteristics, and body, some other characteristics. Each one of the intellect, mind, and the body will start showing their characteristics. So that's basically in the microcosm. He is explaining that each one of us is actually created by the Panchabhutas, which really makes the physical manifestations possible of the intellect, mind, and body. So we have the Jnanendriyas, the Karmendriyas, the Panchapranas, and then of course the Antakarana, that is Buddhi, the mind, intellect, ego, and memories. So at the microcosmic level as well as at the macrocosmic level, you can see that it is the self that is the underlying truth behind every phenomenal appearances. It is the power of that self within us and within everything that enlivens everything that it touches. So everything that it touches, all those physical appearances are the lower self. And so each one of us, the physical being is the lower. And the infinite self, the higher self is right within us, giving us this identity. And that is what we discussed in the last session. And just briefly summarizing what we discussed. And we also touched upon the Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad explanations that actually explains the same thing, that everything is strung on the self as a cluster of gems in a body string. So how does in the practical world, the Jnana Vijnana Yoga, in the knowledge and wisdom, to integrate that, we need to look at those details. And if we look at the details, only we really start appreciating what Krishna is talking to Arjuna. Otherwise, it becomes few slokas which are so abstract that you may not be able to fully comprehend the depth of meaning that it carries. So here, Krishna is talking about the Panchabhutas, earth, water, air, fire, and space, as well as the sun and sky, as the 7 legs upon which these manifestations rest, physical manifestations. So initially the physical manifestation is about as life energy, and that life energy is exhibiting through us as conscious awareness, consciousness first. First, there is a spark of consciousness that it ignites in the physical. And then that opens up. And ultimately, it expresses itself in the outside world through this Panchabhutas, the body which is made up of Panchabhutas, the mind and intellect resulting from this Panchabhutas getting together. So those 7 elements are considered as the legs on which this manifestations rest. And how this manifestation, physical manifestation, actually exists in this world interacting with the environment. How does it do that? And it is analogically expressed in the Mandukya Upanishad as 19 mouths through which we enjoy this world. The self actually expresses through us. These are the Panchabhutas. The Panchabhutas constituting the 5 Jnanendriyas, the 5 Karmendriyas, the 5 Panchapranas, the 5 pranas, and then mind, intellect, memory, and ego. So 5 plus 5, 15, plus mind, intellect, memory, and ego, making up the 19 mouths through which the consciousness expresses itself. So now the self has now become the consciousness within us. And now let us look at the consciousness. We have the outward consciousness. There is this first thing that we notice. First thing all of us are aware of is the outward projection of consciousness. The way consciousness projects outward. It is everything, the whole environment that we see around us, we interact, and what the world that we create. That is the outward consciousness, the world we create. And then, if we look at the world we create, how did that world create itself for us? It is through our thoughts and actions. So our mind and intellect working within, our dreams and aspirations of the mind. So that is an internal consciousness, a consciousness that is looking inward. So those are the power of aspirations and dreams, the world of dreams, inward consciousness. So consciousness, two components. One, the outward projection. The other is the inward projection. If you look at it, everything that we actually do in this world, think and aspire for, is a projection of consciousness into the outside world, as well as a projection of consciousness inside. These two are. So this inward and outward consciousness are two aspects, but there is this spark of inner consciousness that actually initially opens up in every human brain. That is called as the prajna. And that prajna is the root consciousness, or the window that helps us to connect with the senses and the outside world. This infinite expressing through the physical being first opens up through this prajna, manifesting through the prajna. That prajna is the root consciousness. So we have three actually states of consciousness that all of us have. The prajna, the initial one, everyone, just at birth, before, even taking physical birth outside, there is this inside the womb itself, this starts ticking. The prajna starts initially sparking, and that is the point of your individuality. And then at that time, it has nothing, no connection with the outside world. It is just the identity that I am, the separate identity. And then from there, slowly, when the physical apparatus builds up, you have, the mind starts to form, and all those things. And the mind is actually the root for our aspirations and dreams, etc., which actually the thoughts, you can say the thoughts. And that thoughts help us to actually act in this world, projecting in as work, and the way we interact with the world, the outward consciousness. So consciousness develops like that, three stages of consciousness. And so this is basically what the Mandukya Upanishad also talks about. So before that, we actually looked at the list of Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Pranas, and the Arthakarana. And then we saw the explanation of the consciousness, states of consciousness in Mandukya Upanishad, which talks about the 7 legs, the spokes that I have shown here, and the circles, 19 mouths. And we project a world that is, in the outside projection consciousness. That is called as Vaishwanara. And if we look at it, exactly the same components are there in the dreams and aspirations, only that they are not in physical form. And that is the state of Taijasa, which is an inward consciousness, which has got all this 7 legs and 19 mouths, as well as the 19 mouths, including the Andhakaranas. That is Taijasa, the power, the consciousness that is inward looking. Consciousness that is inward looking. Consciousness that is outward projecting is Vaishwanara. Consciousness that is inward projecting is Taijasa. And what created these things? The initial spark that got injected within this physical body through the infinite. That it is also called as the deep sleep state, because it is not connected to anything physical. It is the prajna state, which is which the Mandukya Upanishad talks of as the window to all knowledge and as awareness that we gather. Now, before this, what was the state of that consciousness is also described in the Mandukya Upanishad, which is the state of supreme bliss. That is transcending the physical. That is the self. And that is the infinite self. And that self is basically what is now initially expressing as what? Prajna first, and then slowly develops into Taijasa and into the fourth state called as the Vaishwanara. But it is the how in the reverse order. From Vaishwanara, it is that we actually start seeing things. So, sorry. It is through Vaishwanara that we start seeing things, the consciousness, the waking state consciousness, the outward projecting consciousness is the first consciousness that we are aware of, the first Adi. First Adi. In Sanskrit, it is called Adi, that Adi state of consciousness. And then, before that, the thoughts actually fire your actions, and that the thoughts are considered as the dream state, the aspiration state. It is actually much superior to this outward consciousness because the outward consciousness is as a result of all your thinking. The world that you create is a product of your thoughts. So thoughts are superior. Dreams are superior. Dream state consciousness is superior. It is superior and it is the in-between state. It is superior. Therefore, it is called as Utkarsha. So Utkarsha. And now, when you actually go into this state of deep sleep, you can think about that. You may not be able to think about that initial state of consciousness when you are born, but think about the state when you are completely asleep, dead to the world. That is the state of that same consciousness. That is called as prajna. What happens is everything, the outward consciousness, all the elements, the trees, the sun, the moon, the lion, all the calamities and good things that happen out in the outside world, and all the dreams and aspirations of your inner world, everything merges. Everything merges into this state of consciousness, which is nothing. So it is just getting dissolved into that. And nothing remains. That is the state of deep sleep. So it is that state is called as something like a measure. It is called as in Mandukya Upanishad. They describe it as a measure. It is a measure from which everything emanates. From which everything emanates. Or you can also say the other way, from where everything else becomes one. In the reverse process. That is called as measure. Or in Sanskrit, it is called as minoti. So we have consciousness states, Adi, Utkarsha, and minoti. And therefore, Mandukya Upanishad says that this is pranava, A, U, and Ma, A, U, M, A, U, Ma. And Om, and then the silence is that infinitude, the Atman. The silence, the Atman, the bliss that we talked about, the fourth state, the Turiya state. So we have the Adi, Utkarsha, Minoti, and the Turiya forming the Om and the silence. So the chanting of the mantra is about your connection with that consciousness, the infinitude, and then that which is expressing through being the measure first, and then as thoughts, dreams, and then as actions in the outside world, the physical consciousness of the outside world. So this is a description about how that self is stringing together your experiences in three different states of consciousness. Deep sleep, dream, and the waking state. So your deep sleep, dream, and waking state are all strung together in that same unseen self, the silent self, the bliss self. That is you, the bliss self, that is me. And on that, the ripples. Minoti, Utkarsha, and Adi consciousnesses. Okay, so that is what basically we looked at in the last session. And now, going further ahead, it is therefore this self which is enlivening our consciousness and then becoming our thoughts and then your actions in the outside world. Therefore, look at that mind. Our mind is a product of the self enlivening the physical apparatus. And what are the properties of mind? There are various properties. And it is described as, having three different natures: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Sattva, rajas, tamo gunas. It is riddled with sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas. And therefore, ultimately, whatever thoughts that we express will be a combination of the sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas that are inherent in the physical medium. Therefore, it gives rise to ignorance, inability, and inexperiences along with the knowledge, causing inexplicable experiences. Therefore, we are not able to describe our, the fact that, we talk about self as the infinitude, and each one of us now understand at this moment of time that I am the infinite, because Mandukya Upanishad has declared that way and we have understood it. But the moment we go back into our daily transactions of life, we forget the fact that we are the self. And we start thinking my identity, and then we talk about identify with our failures and successes and all challenges, and then our mind gets disturbed. We forget the fact that we are the self, in the sense that, we know that we are the self, we have the knowledge, but then in practice we are not able to. We have the jnana, but jnana is not there. So how do you actually combine this together or unite the jnana with the vijnana? We need to understand this in detail. In the nuts and bolts level, we need to understand this. That is what jnana, vijnana, yoga is initially trying to do in the 7th chapter. The self is actually beyond the qualities of sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas. The infinite. It has no qualities. But then it works through the medium, which is our physical BMI, composed of the 7 legs and 19 mouths, creating these various types of consciousnesses. Tejasa, Prajna, Tejasa, and Vaishwanara. And then works through the Sattva, Rajas, gunas, which are inherent properties of the material matter. Therefore, it is very difficult to cross over this identity. Initially, we will, it is difficult. That is the reason why all of us feel it is, how can I? Yes, I know, but it is difficult. No, all of us say that, we say, yes, we understood, but, in Karma Yoga, we were talking about the practical aspects of understanding this through the attitudes and motivations and dispassion that we need to express through our work. We understand that, but we are, everyone says, but, it is difficult to follow that. Why? Why is that but coming into the picture? It is because of the illusion that this self, when it is enlivening the manifestation that it creates. Okay, that is the problem. That illusion is basically what creates all this problem of ignorance, inability, and inexperiences. So we need to get over that. The only requirement is, and there is only one process, and that is Sravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Listening to this knowledge as much as possible, reading, and reading is also actually reading is also a form of listening. Actually, you read and listen. That is all what is happening. So listening, Sravanam, Mananam, reflecting on this constantly, and Nididhyasanam, practicing this connectivity. In whatever little ways you can, keep practicing selflessness. That is not running after your body, mind, and intellect. So Sravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam is the only process. Keep doing that is basically what this is teaching us. And if you look at it a little bit more and further, the divine power of delusion that is caused by the 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas, is basically what we need to understand. Self. The self is there, and inherent in the self, the power of the self, but not expressed, is the potential for sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic gunas. The power that enlivens sattva, rajas, tamo gunas. It is, almost an analogy I can use, even though it is not, don't get stuck in that, but just to understand. Electricity, if you equate it to itself, the power. This power of electricity has the potential to create heat, the potential to create light, and the potential to create, let's say, coolness. It is the heat, light, and coolness. But heat, light, and coolness are not the property of actually electricity. Heat, light, and coolness are the potential powers that this electricity can create. But for that, it requires a medium. So that is how, if you look at a LED bulb, and then there's electricity enters that and creates, this power, the photons to emerge from this, and then you have light. Similarly, heater element, heat is produced. So heat, light, and coolness, and refrigeration element, simple example. So these properties are already inherent in electricity, but then they are not expressed. They are transcendent powers of electricity, which creates this when it is expressing through a medium. Similarly, sattva, rajas, tamo gunas are potential powers of the self. And they will start expressing only in a medium which has got these characteristics to produce this. And then that is the, ultimately it expresses as ignorance, inexperiences, and inabilities in our body, intellect, and mind, and the body. By the processes of projection and veiling. Projection, veiling and unveiling. Unveiling is opening up knowledge. Knowledge opens up your mind. Veiling, ignorance and lethargy, etc., shuts up your mind. Veiling and projection. Because of this knowledge and ignorance, you do something. Half knowledge, half ignorance. And so people behave in a different way. Projection. So this knowledge, projection, and ignorance, or sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas, are thus created through the mind, whose property is that. That is our mind. That is our property. That is the reason why we forget all these things, because we are shrouded in mystery. This divine power of delusion is called as Maya. So let us now try to understand what this Maya is. So today's takeaway would be only this detailed looking at Maya. As much as possible, I will try to simplify a lot of stuff that is available on Maya. So let us look at that. Okay, consciousness. We talked about consciousness, which gives us the life, existence as an individual entity, and produces awareness within us. For us, we have life in us, and then awareness starts coming in because of the consciousness getting connected to the senses and sense organs, etc. And with the eye, we are aware of the light, sensations, etc. So mind and the senses. Actually, mind and the senses. Mind involves the jnanendriyas and the karmendriyas, etc. The control centers for that. And the senses, the physical senses, and the organs of action. So you can see this mind and senses have the capacity to actually reference itself. Therefore, we call ourselves I, considering that the mind and the physical apparatus is me. So I have put the small I there. It gives existence to the small I. This is how we work as an individual. So let us now look at that. First, what is happening is, it is the intellect that actually starts functioning within initially, producing what is called as ego and a self-reference to the physical medium as the identity. Intellect, therefore, is putting on the semblance of the self. We forget the self. And the moment the intellect forms, we start thinking, I am the intellect. I am the intellect. We forgot the self. Then the mind, the complexities of the mind starts forming, emotions start appearing, attachments and feelings come in, attachments and emotions come in. The mind, therefore, puts on the intellect of the semblance of intellect. Intellect is now becomes secondary, and the mind and emotions and attachments become more and more forceful and starts expressing. Therefore, I say I am the intellect with the mind controlled intellect. I am the mind and intellect. That is my identity. And then the physical senses also become powerful, and sensations take control. Pleasures, we run after pleasures. I, therefore, am becoming the intellect, mind, and the body. I consider myself the intellect, mind, body conglomerate, the individual, the physical being. This is what is happening. In fact, more of this is described in this particular manner, not in 7th chapter, but in the 18th chapter. But I am, connecting that here because we are going through a summary. But this is what Krishna was talking about in the 7th chapter. So this is one of the important things that all of us should understand, that when we actually study only one chapter or something like that from the Bhagavad-Gita, or take one sloka from somewhere, then we actually do not connect with the various other things that actually it implies. So the study of the whole of Bhagavad-Gita, reflecting on it, thinking about it, and trying to connect all those elements together is very important in really understanding what the essence of Bhagavad-Gita is, the essence of Upanishads is. Okay, so this is the situation. This I, the small I am the intellect, mind, and the body, is basically superimposed. It is superimposed on the S, the self. How? Like, if you actually happen to see a coiled up rope in darkness, not enough light, you can mistake it. How you mistake that rope to be a snake? You impose, what happens is your limited knowledge is superimposed on the rope, and the snake appears. Raju Sarpavada. That is how Vedanta describes this phenomenon of misrepresenting truth or misapprehending the truths. We misapprehend the self as the BMI, the snake, BMI, the self, the rope is forgotten. No, so it is called as the processor. What is this Maya therefore? Vedanta describes it as the non-apprehension of the truth. I do not apprehend the truth that it is rope. I do not apprehend the truth I am the infinite self. Leading to, what does this bring us to? It brings us to the misapprehension of reality. I misapprehend the reality. It is, I actually misapprehend. I see a snake there. I see my BMI there. Non-apprehension of truth leading to misapprehension of reality. That is what the technical definition of Maya is. This process, how does it happen? It happens because of knowledge, ignorance, and projection. You have knowledge, some knowledge, but not full knowledge because of the darkness, ignorance. And then the light comes, that ignorance is moved, only we will see the truth. Otherwise, we will start projecting. We think that it is a snake, and in that process, at the instant of you thinking that it is the snake, what is happening? The snake is a truth for you as far as that moment is concerned. And therefore, maybe you will take actions because it is, your heart rate might increase, you will get, you will be afraid of that and start running and reacting in such manners that you think that it is the real snake there. Similarly, all of us think that we are the BMI, and we react in this world based on that. We have frustrations, we have anger, we have greed, jealousy, we have compassion sometimes, and all those things. Oh, everything is there. We forget the fact that we are the infinite, not touched by any of these emotions and intellectual ideations and sensations of pleasure. We are actually, that pleasures, when you say sensations of pleasures, we have both extremes. We have pain and pleasure. We have happiness and sorrow, etc. We get we actually start swinging between these extremes of reactions. But that is the property of the mind, not the self. Self is bliss. So this is the concept of Maya. So I do hope that you have got a reasonably good picture about what Maya is. In terms of the Vedantic description, which might appear to be a little bit technical and, not easy to grasp, that is non-apprehension of truth, leading to misapprehension of reality, is Maya. It looks complex, but then it is very simple. described in that fashion. But we need to understand that that understanding is basically what the problem is. So once more, let us look at that. We have the self with the inherent properties of Sattva-Rajas Tamoguna, the potential to create Sattva-Rajas Tamogunas, but then in the physical body, the intellect starts functioning and tapping this, or the Sattva-Rajas Tamogunas can now start expressing, will start expressing. Initially, I am the intellect feeling comes in because the ego takes shape, and the mind therefore connects with the ego and then drives us forward for satisfying the mind. I am the intellect plus mind. I forget the self. I'm not satisfying anymore. It is not my objective becomes the satisfaction of the mind and the intellect rather than the self. And the pleasures of the senses. Ultimately, the base level thing, the most, what do you call, basic thing, that is the gross thing of senses. So I am the intellect, mind, and body, and that is what happens. And we start working in this, applying my mind and intellect, and through the senses. What do? I work to get rid of the distresses at the body and mind level. Body level, initially, the body level becomes predominant. So that is why we go after pleasures. Or some people, if they really start, controlling their minds, what happens is they will use thought power. They will use thought power to control the mind and acquire emotional balance and control. So they will not run after the pleasures, but still the mind is controlling. And engages, or in the intellect, if it is predominant, it engages in curiosity in trying to understand the true nature and gains control of the intellect. Equipoise is attained. This is how you raise yourself up. How do you raise yourself up? You have to apply the self itself to your mind, intellect and mind. Intellect first, intellect powerful, mind controlling the mind, and intellect and mind thus controlling the senses. The self itself has to be used to raise yourself from this condition that is produced by the self. Your pleasures are produced by the self. But you have to use the self itself to control the pleasure tendencies and raise yourself up. That is the reason why in the 6th chapter it was quoted as Udaret Atmanatmanam. You have to raise yourself by your own self. And to reach that state of joys of the self, always powered by the subtle intellect, the highest form of intellect that we can have. You can tune your intellect to a subtle intellect so that it understands this and then it regularly practices this. Powered by subtle intellect, equipoise, equanimity, and peacefulness. That is infinite, lasting success. That is the state of Prahlada. This is the state of Prahlada, that ultimate happiness, that which never reduces. It will give you permanent peace, a peacefulness, a tranquility, a quiescence. That is Prahlada. And this Prahlada state often gets entangled in the pleasures of the senses, the bottom level. Hiranyakashipu. Situations that are clocked in gold, because a clock in gold, that means, glitz, glamour, and instant pleasures. Our mind that is clocked in instant pleasures, the path of the pleasure, attracted by glitz and glamour, egoistically pursuing the same sort of happiness, is what is called as the Hiranyakashipu. And that Hiranyakashipu can only be killed if we are able to identify what is the path of pleasure and what is the path of good. And not only identifying the viveka, not only identifying it, but also having the dispassion, the strength of mind, the power of mind to withstand the attractions of the pleasures. It is a lion power. The mind's lion power is dispassion or vairagya or virya. And the mind, man's power is viveka. The mind and lion power combining together, Narasimha taking shape in our bodies, in our minds. then we will be reaching that state of infinite lasting peace. Prahlada will be liberated. So this is how we overcome Maya. How do we overcome Maya? We know what Maya is, and how do we overcome Maya? Through the process of letting the the Narasimha take root in our mind, to identify the path of pleasures and the path of goodness. This is a practical thing that we need to understand from this description of Maya and all the and the description of the self as being the unseen string through this beads of the necklace that we see outside. Don't fall for the necklace, but fall for the string that makes the necklace possible. So that is how Krishna started the dialogue in the 7th chapter, to make sure that you really understand what self is and start loving the self. Okay, so just one slide on this technical slide on the aspect of Maya for those who are interested. Let us look at this. That which always exists is called as Sat. Sat. Sat and Asat. Sat is that which always existed. That is what is called as real. Always. Yesterday it was that, today it is that, tomorrow also it will be there. On all 3 frames of time. Something that which exists in all 3 frames of time is Sat. And that which never existed is Asat. Never existed is Asat. Something that which never existed is Asat. So now if you look at this definition, just look at each one of us. Can you tell me what we are? Are we Sat or Asat? Anyone?
Yeah. We are Sat. We as the self, I, big letter I is Sat.
Okay, because we have been discussing all this, we talk about the self. Otherwise, in general, the common man, what does he think? In the sense, and from the common perspective, each one of us, are we Sat or Asat?
Yeah, from common man perspective, it is Asat.
What is that?
No. From my perspective also, it's all Asat.
It is Asat.
Whatever I am thinking, it is part of intellect, right? Which is Asat.
Okay, so
the so-called Atma or Atman or Paramatman, whatever I think, it's all Asat.
Okay, Sat. Okay, now as per the Vedanta definitions, each one of us is not Sat or Asat. That is the thing. Because that which never existed is called as Asat. And that which always exists is called as Sat. So in between this, there is something that is neither Sat nor Asat, and that is called as Maya. That is that true understanding, in the sense that when we are living, all our experiences are real at that point in time. Just like the snake was real when you are experiencing it. And therefore, it was not Asat at that point in time. So you cannot say that it was never existing, isn't it? It is existing in your mind for that.
Can you give an example of something that never existed, sir?
That which never existed, in the manifested world, there is nothing that has never existed. So that is that. But just as you now said, the Paramatman, the infinite, that is Sat, which is always existing. That's the thing. Okay, something that never existed, you can technically the Vedanta describes some examples, but I will give you that. But it doesn't really make, in the sense, meaningful. In the sense that, can you think of a horse that has got a trunk, a horse with a trunk, like an elephant?
Yes, sir. It is there in our mind.
But
it's there in our mind.
Yeah, but
it's a thought.
You can imagine that imagination you can create. Therefore, at that point in time, it is real, but you are not going to experience it. We are not looking. It is not like the snake. The snake, we experienced it. Right. So Vedanta gives some examples like that. A snake with a horse with a trunk or something. Those kind of things are the ones which never Asat. But Sat is infinite. And
from that perspective, sir, even a rope is Asat, right, sir?
Yeah, man.
I mean,
it's not Sat. Okay, sorry.
Both rope and snake are
absolutely
Asat.
right. Vijay, when any subject, not only in Vedanta, anywhere else, when analogies are used, that should be used only for that purpose. You should not take it further. So, to understand the concept. So, analogies are used only for understanding a concept. So, Raju Sarpavada is also like that. If you really look at it, it is that snake, the rope, technically, as you said, because you are already, experienced or exposed to the knowledge of these things. That is why you are able to think that, the rope is also not, inexplicable. It is neither asat nor sat. I mean, the sense it is in between state. So let's not go into that level of extreme this thing of taking that analogy. Analogy only used for the conceptual understanding. That in any subject it is like that. So you should only use it that way. Okay. So yes, but then that is, as Vijay said, yes, even the rope is non-existent. Never existed. In the sense, in real sense, it is non-existent. But let us not confuse that. Just the analogy, Raju Sarpavada used in Vedanta is basically what I am trying to explain, and I am explaining the terminologies. So we have snake is imaginary, hence not real. Asat. Snake is real at the time of experience, therefore it is not asat. So it is neither sat nor asat. We experience and suffer because of ignorance. But we suffer these things. Why? Because of ignorance. And that ignorance created by this misapprehension is what is called as Maya. Hence, this ignorance that the Maya creates is difficult to explain. And that is the reason why we all feel difficult that to really connect the reverse process, to really connect with the self, and then practice that in living. We suddenly forget that. Because it is an inexplicable situation, an intricate situation, a difficult situation. So nature of this Maya, the ignorance created by this Maya is that is why in Vedanta it is described that it is anirvajaniyam. This ignorance is considered as anirvajaniyam. It is inexplicable because it is neither sat nor asat. And it is jnana virodhi. It is against the concept of knowledge. And trigunatmaka. It is created because of sattva, rajas, and tamogunas. This Maya, therefore, or sometimes, very loosely we refer to as an illusion or magic, even though that doesn't really capture the essence of Maya. It is in Sanskrit split as the meaning is agadhita gatana, that which makes the impossible possible. Ya Maya, Sa Maya. Ya Ma, Sa Maya. That which is not really there is Maya. Okay, so I think that is enough for the, technicalities. So let's stop it on that. I mean, Maya will not go further on Maya. In a nutshell, it is a rope. A rope is a snake, and self or not self is the ignorance that is created because of ignorance, knowledge, and the inference. The tamoguna, the rajoguna, and tamoguna, sattoguna, and the rajoguna. Creating avarana shakti, the power of veiling it, and the viksheba shakti, the power of projecting. The mind has got two functions: the veiling power and the projecting power. So that is the power of Maya expressing in the physical world. Maya expressing in the physical, in the mind. The predicament of average performers is the ignorance of the self. Roadblock, which is a roadblock to self-realization. So we need to understand that. Let us look at a picture now so that we get an idea about how all this is happening. Maya is the illusion of perception. We'll start from the illusion of perception definition. Illusion of perception. Perception creating an illusion within our mind. So what is this illusion? Illusion is created because of knowledge, ignorance, and apprehension. That is sattoguna, rajoguna, and apprehension or objection. What we actually, because of the desire and do something, apprehension. Knowledge, ignorance, and apprehension. Sattva, rajas, tamogunas. Perception. What is perception? Perception is a result of the functions of sensing, feeling, and judging. That is the body, the mind, and the intellect, sensing, feeling, and judging. So, sensing, feeling, and judging, combining with knowledge, ignorance, apprehension, is basically what illusory perception is. If you look at the words and then try to find out what each one of them means. Okay, so fundamentally, it is this. And what is this actually? This sensing, feeling, and judging. And knowledge, ignorance, apprehension, how did it all happen to us? That is what Krishna started with. That is the consciousness within us is creating all this. The consciousness, the infinite expressing through the medium is what creates knowledge, ignorance, apprehension, sensing, feeling, and judging. The consciousness. Within the time frames that the life is within us. The space-time object. So that is creating the self. The feeling of existence within us, the consciousness, becomes the existing, the power of self within us as the existence force. And connecting with the body, mind, and intellect becomes the doer, the player, the doer enjoyer, the jiva bhava within us. It creates the jiva bhava. I am the doer. I am the enjoyer. Kartrutva, bhoktrutva bhava. Kartra and bhokta, doer, enjoyer feeling, it is generated within us. This consciousness is actually a result of the self working through the physical medium, or Purusha and the Prakriti and the rules governing nature. Energy plus matter plus phenomenal rules. This is infinite expressing in the manifested form, Purusha plus Prakriti. Pure energy plus potential powers of matter. When it goes through matter only, matter exhibits the powers. So this infinitude actually helps the matter to work its ways. So that's why pure energy plus potential matter is infinitude. Everything in this universe, ever created, ever going to be created, was created, etc., is all there in the infinite. It is everything. So what do you mean by infinite? Infinite means everything. It is not nothing. It is everything. That everything expresses as the powers of Purusha and Prakriti within us, as the power of knowledge, ignorance, apprehension, seeing, feeling, and judging, creating what is called as the Maya, illusion of perception. This is how we work. And to get rid of this, we need to understand the self. The knowledge of the self is important. The knowledge of the self is important. So that we work using dharma, karma, and karma together. Dharma yoga, dharma infused into karma yoga. What is dharma? Dharma is about the power of the self, expressing the self, compassion, love, peacefulness, etc. Sustainability, inclusiveness, and power and expansion, or creativity, productivity, and enrichment. This is what Karma Yoga is all about. So Karma Yoga is the process or the path through which the knowledge of the self is expressed such that we identify with the self and not with the illusory power of Maya. This is the theoretical concept which we were looking at in the practical manner through Karma Yoga. So once we try to understand this in detail, what is happening is we are now getting a feeling of what the self is. That self then becomes our driving force that will help us to actually get rid of the Maya, the illusory powers of Maya, which is created because of the likes, dislikes, hope and despair, etc. The dual nature of the mind. So, ragadvesha, that is basically what creates, due to the delusion of pairs caused by selfish desires and aversion. Selfishness and aversion. Every one of us is afflicted with this illusion of perception, Maya. That is the reason why all of us say, it is difficult, but it is all this is okay, but it is difficult. Kind of feelings come because the way the mind works is like that. But we are also blessed. Krishna is infusing Arjuna with the faith that despite all this, as human beings, we have the capacity to fight this illusion through the same mind that is actually a product of illusion. And we are not doing that because of selfishness and aversion. So the message is that throw away selfishness and throw away your likes and dislikes. That is what Karma Yoga also taught us. So this is the fundamental, solution to our problem is to start doing things in a selfless manner. Even, start practicing. Don't initially get entrenched with the idea that you have to do some big unselfish things. No, start slowly, every day, trying to do something small, selflessly. Keep doing that, enlarging the scope of selflessness, doing good to at least one person first, doing good to two people, doing good to 3 or 4, and then, increasing the number of people that you touch through your actions in the best way possible, in the good path of good, without any likes and dislikes. Even if you don't feel like that, start forcefully do it, likes and dislikes. So that way you can reduce your likes and dislikes, and that way you can actually reduce your selfishness. Keep doing that. The reducing selfishness and reducing likes and dislikes is the path towards life's progress. That is what, the solution, initial solution that is given out in the 7th chapter. And then concludes. The 7th chapter concludes with this message, which is basically what we are going to look at 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th again, more and more in detail. If you understand this nature of the self, the nature of you, who are you? Self. That is your nature, Adhyatma. You are out and out of the Atma, the infinitude, Adhyatma. If you understand that you are Adhyatma, and as then that Adhyatma expressing through the physical medium as life force, I am the life force, as the principle that exists within all that is born and which perishes, that is Adi Buddha. So this life is having 2 conditions, birth and death, anything, any physical thing. That is called as Adi Buddha, the living beings, all the existing manifestation is Adi Buddha. So you are the Adhyatma and you are the Adi Buddha. As the universal energies that sustain the life, the Adi, that life force is, it's a divine power of the infinitude. That is Adi Deva, the phenomenal powers. And also as within the individual, we have this Adhyatma self, Adi Buddha, the divine, and Adi Buddha, the physical appearances, and Adi Deva, the powers of life expressing as metabolic capabilities, etc. within each one of us, giving rise to the thoughts in the mind. And those thoughts, to connect with the self, there is only one way, that is the thoughts to becoming selfless. Thoughts are selfless. The power of sacrifice within us. So the power of sacrifice is the thoughts of selflessness. The power of sacrifice is the manifested infinitude within each one of us. So we have to have the faith that we are Adi Yajna, sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice is actually me. So if you say that I am the infinite, and understand or to connect with infinitude is difficult. So instead of trying to connect with what is difficult in your conceptual frame of thinking, infinitude itself is very difficult to understand. Or, all you have to do is to understand that I am sacrifice. The very purpose of my living is sacrifice. If you start thinking that I am sacrifice, and why I live in this world is to make sacrifices for what? For Karma Yoga, for the creative, productive, enriching aspects of living. That sacrifice, Adi Yajna. I am Adi Yajna. That is, I am the Adi Varaha Yajna. Varaha Avadar within each one of us. That Yajna. the power of sacrifice within us. That Varaha, you need to bring it up. Your life, your world should be brought up by Varaha. Your world should be brought up by Varaha. That is the significance of the Varaha avatar, who is picturized as carrying the earth on its tusks. The Adi Varaha Murti, the Adi Yajna Murti, the sacrifice that we need to use to pull up the world of aspirations, dreams and aspirations, and the world of the Vaishwanara, the world we create. So imagine, from our prajna, sacrifice should be one surging upward. From our prajna, Adi Varaha Murti should rise, creating a world of selflessness, dreams of selflessness, and the actions of selflessness in the outer world. This is from where Bhagavata starts. The Purana, Bhagavata starts with this avadara of Adi Varaha, Varaha Murti. So you should actually throw away your eye that looks at glitter and glamour and glories and lift the world of selflessness from within. Kill Hiranyaksha and lift the world. And thereafter, it is a process of Hiranyakashipu, taking control. Kill it through Viveka and Vairagya, using Narasimha, and emerge as a Prahlada. So just see how, the Puranas actually are building up this story that the Upanishad gives us, knowledge that the Upanishad gives us. The jnana that the Upanishad gives us is exemplified in practical words as Vijnana in the Bhagavata Puranas. So we have the Jnana Vijnana Yoga, our Sanatana Dharma scriptures. The knowledge of the Sanatana Dharma scriptures are so structured and given to us in the form of the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavata Puranas, Bhagavata Purana, for example. And we see the merging of this jnana and vijnana in those. So that in living in epics like Mahabharata, we can see all this exhibition of all this in this outside world. Okay, so this is basically what we have. And that is what, the point at which we start. The process of gaining love for ourselves, bhakti, of our controlled BMI or limited BMI expanding into the infinitude. I hope the 7th chapter, Jnana Vijnana Yoga, has given that seed of thought in our minds such that we start the process of connecting with the self through the power of sacrifice that is laid as a seed within our bosom, the prajna. Let us take that sacrifice out from the prajna and continuously use that in the process of life, in our dreams and aspirations, and throw it out into the world as, actions and ideas, and creating an enriched environment outside. We will continue with the rest of the bhakti aspects in the next session onwards. At this point, I will stop. And with that, and we will continue, we will discuss your thoughts after this.